In today's video, we're kicking things off to see how GitHub Copilot can assist in writing boilerplate code. And before we start, take a second and hit subscribe to join me as we uncover AI-powered programming tools and tips that'll keep you ahead in this new era of software development. Let's jump into VS Code here. I want to show you how we can create these files from nothing and use Copilot to do a lot of the work for us. So in this example, we have a file here that's a person.ts file. The requirement at the top dictates that we need to have an interface with a name and age attribute. So, we can type this out and that would be fine, but we can just have a requirement, whether it's from a specification or a ticket that we might have, and place that as our context to start. Just hitting line return a couple of times, you'll see Copilot has an immediate response because it's a somewhat simple solution here. So in this example, we can go ahead and just tab complete to accept that response from Copilot. Again, a very efficient and fast way to go from a requirement to code. In the next example here, I want to showcase how we can create something a little bit more complex and build on that context from the person TypeScript file. So here we have a requirement. We want to create an Express server that calls a Postgres database to get a profile. So instead of doing a tab completion here, I want to showcase how we can add some additional context. So in our chat window with Copilot, I'm going to paste in that same exact comment that we had at the top of the file. But in addition to that, I'm going to add some additional context by specifying the person file from our boilerplate folder here. So you'll see once I complete this, it's referencing two classes, and I'll scroll back up to the top after it completes. So the file that we're currently in is being referenced. In addition, the person.ts file is being used as well. So down below, you'll see when it generates out this Express server, it's going to intuitively create a profile profile/ID endpoint. And it knew this because I used a singular noun there. I said a profile instead of profiles, plural. And so it did a good job of understanding that nuance. And as well, since I added some context on the type of object that might exist in our database, it knew to include name and age only instead of something generic like star. So whenever you add more context to Copilot and specific appropriate context, you're definitely going to get better responses. And this is just one example of that. So what we can do is we can go ahead and use the apply an editor, or we can use the insert at cursor. So since there's nothing in here, insert at cursor works just fine. The apply an editor is meant for maybe navigating a lot of different existing lines of code with a smaller edit that Copilot suggested. So for now, we can just inject that at the cursor location. So you can see here, that's the complete file. Going from nothing to this and having something that we can run quickly and iterate on is honestly a massive productivity boost. And I know it might not have done things at the ideal kind of location, like you would want to extract these out into a different location and then use environmental variables, etc. But all of that can be iterated on and refactored on, and we'll cover that in a later video as well. Okay, so jumping over to this profile component, I want to show how we could call that API, again, add on to this context that we already have with this requirement and make it into something that we can iterate on and have this boilerplate code finished in no time. So let's read through this together. So we've got a requirement that we need to create a profile page.js React functional component that uses Tailwind CSS. The function will call the profile service.get function to populate the component. So again, I'm just making some assumptions here on a kind of architecture arbitrarily, but I just wanted to showcase this as a quick example of creating some boilerplate. I love using Tailwind CSS. There's a load of different libraries that people might want to use, but the nice thing is that this just knows Tailwind CSS syntax, and you can iterate on that really simplistically. And I love the refactor flow with Copilot with something like Tailwind CSS because the edits are in line and it's just a breeze to work with. Okay, so taking this top level comment here, I'm going to go ahead and throw this into our sidebar chat. You'll see we get a pretty robust component from the start. I'll inject that into our editor. I'll collapse this down. So obviously we have a TypeScript file and we've got a lot of syntax errors, but let's just try to look past that for now. So we have our profile service that's being called. I think that did a good job of making an assumption. We can refactor from that if we needed to. A use state from that as well is already initiated, which is nice. And it assumed that we had email username, right? So instead we could go back and see what might happen if we used our context from our server or person TypeScript files. So let's redo that prompt. So I'll paste that in, but again, using some additional context, I'll set file and let's just put the person.ps file as our additional context. And we'll probably see here that the properties that are being displayed are just going to be our name and age. So a lot better result whenever you give it the context that is targeted at your application. So again, sometimes Copilot will generate responses with open tabs, but it's not always going to happen. So to be sure that you're getting the best result, it's good to add that context deliberately through chat if you're doing something a little bit more robust like a boilerplate file. Okay, so that was a rapid fire boilerplate exercise with Copilot. We're going to get into refactoring, testing, and all sorts of other things that developers face every day during your coding efforts. And, Copilot can really come to the rescue in a lot of these cases and, alleviate your headaches that you might be having. And I hope that you had fun watching this video and got a little bit out of it. And so again, hit subscribe if you want to join me on this journey of finding out about GitHub Copilot and other AI-powered programming tools. And if you thought this was cool and you want to see a lot more about GitHub Copilot, check out my book. The link is in the description below. Thanks again for joining me, and we'll see you in the next one. Bye.